Welcome to the Adventures in Learning podcast. My guest today is setting a record, I think, for a number of appearances on the podcast. Right now, it's a three-way tie between James Ponti, Catherine Applegate, and Vanessa Brantley Newton. James, I think you might be breaking that tie today. I'm so excited to welcome you to talk about the latest City Spies book, Europa. I read it and plowed through it in a couple of days. It's really good. And
it takes a while to write them. You don't need to rush through reading them.
I know, I'm worse than the kids.
Yeah, the kids are terrible about that.
But they're so good. It's hard not to. I also have, because I didn't have you up with the latest Sherlock Society, and I meant to tell you how much I loved that one, too.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Wonder, curiosity, connection. Where will your adventures take you? I'm Dr. Diane, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of Adventures in Learning. So welcome. We are celebrating the book birthday of Europa, which is the 7th book in the City Spies series. Is
book
that
7.
Right?
Yep, that's right.
Wow. It's almost like you've got one for every continent.
Well, we had all the characters originally were from different continents. And then on top of that, each character got their own book. So this is the first time we've gone back and someone is the main character for the second time. So Sydney kind of takes the lead in this one. And so, yeah, so we've been hitting the continents. We've been hitting the characters. That's the goal.
It's wonderful. So I thought maybe since today is World Read Aloud Day when we're recording it, that we might start with a little bit of a read aloud.
Oh, wow. We're going to start with that. Okay. Here's the book. Love the cover that Yao Yao did. She's an amazing artist.
It's beautiful.
And it's, my family's from Rome. My father grew up like less than a mile from the Colosseum. So that's a nice touch for me. I'll read chapter 1 from the first chapter, which actually is in London, not in Rome at this point. Chapter 1, His Majesty's Prison, Belmarsh. Lucien Allard was in a hurry, which was never a good thing to be in prison. He took a deep breath to calm himself and looked at his reflection in the mirror, or at least what passed for a mirror, or at least what passed for one in HMP Belmarsh. Actual mirrors weren't allowed because they could be shattered, and their shards could be used as weapons. Instead, he stared into a dull metal rectangle the size of a book that made his face look like it was part of an abstract painting. How had he fallen so far? As the leader of the global crime syndicate Umbra, he was used to traveling the world in style, eating gourmet meals, and sleeping in one of his luxury homes. Now he subsisted on prison food and spent most of his hours confined to a cell that was 6 feet by 10 feet. He was in a hurry, all right. A hurry to get out. Guard! He called through the small slat in his door. I just want to say right now, I can't do accents, so no one's going to sound British or whatever. I'm not capable of that still. I can write in an accent, and I hear it in my head, but not when it comes out of my mouth. The problem was that no one had ever escaped from the high-security unit at Belmarsh. The HSU was the prison within a prison, where the United Kingdom housed its most dangerous criminals. Allard had counted no fewer than 20 gated doors, many with built-in time delays, that he had passed through to reach his cell. Getting out would be virtually impossible. Virtually. Guard! He called out again impatiently. Settle down, bellowed a corrections officer named Blanton, as his ruddy face appeared in the opening. What do you want? I want dinner at the Wolseley, Allard replied. Steak au poivre. I don't know if I pronounced that remotely right. Just so you know. It's spelled right, though. But I guess I'll have to settle for a tepid cup of Earl Grey here in the Spur. Belmarsh may have been the most notorious prison in Britain, but it was still British. Afternoon tea was practically considered a basic human right. 5 minutes, the guard instructed as he unlocked the door to let him out. That's not enough time for it to steep properly, Allard replied. Maybe not at the Wolseley, replied Blanton with a chuckle, but here at the HSU, that's the exact right amount of time. Allard smirked. You know, you're a barbarian. And according to the missus, my communication skills aren't what they should be. Allard laughed as he stepped into the corridor. We're all works in progress. Despite the notorious past, the 14 inmates in the HSU tended to get along well with the guards, a necessity when spending so much time in such tight quarters. Because of this, the officers were only allowed to work in the unit for 3 years, before being transferred to another part of the prison. This was to ensure that none developed too close a bond with the men they were supposed to be supervising. The cells were laid out in 4 spurs, joined together at a common area with a small television and a kitchenette that had a microwave and a toaster. This was necessary because HSU inmates were not allowed in the cafeteria, where they could interact with prisoners from general population. Rather than a mug, Lucian had a paper cup, and instead of a kettle, there was a dispenser that provided water that was warm, if not exactly hot. "We're out of sugar," said Allard, holding up an empty bowl. "There's more in the cupboard," answered Blanton. Allard opened the cabinet to reveal 3 bags of sugar. He took the one marked with a small blue dot and turned his body ever so slightly so that it blocked the guard's view while he refilled the bowl. As he did, he dipped his fingertips into the crystals and pulled out a phone. He'd paid £15,000 to have it smuggled into the prison, making this quite likely the most expensive cup of tea in history. He deftly tucked the phone between his upper arm and body, which obscured it from view a few minutes later when he returned to his cell. Allard walked slowly because no one was ever in a rush to get back inside, and he didn't want to arouse any suspicion. "I don't suppose I can sit outside and drink this on the patio," he said. "You mean a concrete slab surrounded by steel mesh?" Blanton replied as he reopened the cell for him. "You know the answer to that. Can't blame a man for trying." During his time atop the world's most wanted list of law enforcement agencies around the world, Allard had been so evasive and mysterious that he was known simply as Le Fantôme, the Ghost. Now he was inmate SS1230AA. It had been a titanic fall from power, and in return he planned to exact revenge on the people responsible for causing it. Later that night, well after lights out, he slipped the phone out of its new hiding place in his mattress and sent a simple 2-word text that set in motion his plan to bring about retribution and freedom. Activate Lazarus. And so that's the opening. So the first 6 books, we've been chasing Le Fantôme. We finally get him arrested at the end of book 6, and we open book 7, and he's already trying to manipulate his way, figure out a way to escape prison. And I thought that'd be a fun way to start the book. My goal is always have different types of starts so that it doesn't feel formulaic. It's funny. So it's like 5, maybe 6 pages there. More goes into writing those than you would think.
Tell us about that.
I watched videos where they toured HMS Belmarsh. I read reviews. I like the prison number. I studied how are the prisoner numbers in England and what do the different numbers and letters indicate. I watched the guy the first ever cameras to go into the HSU, and I watched all the gates that they used and all the things that, I wanted it to be as accurate as possible. And also, you don't know what you're going to find. And what I found is the one time someone has managed to sneak a phone into the HSU, it was in the sugar for the tea. So, oh, wait, I'll use that. So the research helps you, gives you ideas, helps make things accurate. There's also inside jokes that I like to put in there. So, my favorite thing as a kid, I loved Schoolhouse Rock. And Schoolhouse Rock is the Boston Tea Party, calls it the biggest cup of tea in history. So I made it the most expensive cup of tea in history. I have a rights agent in London. So she handles all the translations of my books. So Spies is in like 16 different languages. And her name is Clementine. So Clementine, the character in the book, is named after Clementine, my agent, who I adore. And when I met her in London the last time, we went to the Wolseley. I did not have that steak dinner because that's not my thing. But they had the best banana splits I've ever had in my life. And my wife the same way. And like 8 months later, I wrote to her, to Clemmy, for something. And I said, I still think about that banana split like an inordinate amount of time. And she wrote back within like 2 minutes. She goes, I think about that all the time. So it wasn't just us. So all these little things. And, it's funny, I didn't think about that. As I started reading it, I started recognizing, oh, that's why I put that in there. Oh, that was that fun for that. Oh, that was this. And I don't expect people to know any of those things. But hopefully it gives a richness to the writing that it seems like it's just more than a list of facts and emotions and character moving from place to advance a plot. I read that it really is a problem, and you wouldn't think it because the HSU, this high security unit, is so small and they're in such close contact with the guards, they do become very friendly. And they had to have passed that rule because they had to make sure, the guards can't be too friendly. And it's funny because these are the worst criminals in all of England. And yet here they are, and their guards are there because they just live together. And, I didn't get into it, but like, they had the game room and you saw the guards laughing with them. It's just like
Right.
not what you'd expect. So you want to capture that, but you want to do it quickly and you want to not distract from the through line of the story that you're trying to tell, which is, okay, no one's ever gotten out of this place before. Is he going to be able to do it?
Right. And I loved the fact that as you go deeper and sort of explore, does he get out, doesn't he? And I'm not going to spoil that for people, but our city spies end up having to go through their own transformations, because in the end, they're kids.
Right.
And they've got kid problems and they're growing up and trying to figure out who they are. They've got confidence issues that hit in the middle grade years.
Yeah.
And, as relations change and expectations change, they've got to change too. And I thought you really did a nice job of making that relatable and real too, especially for Sydney and Paris.
Yeah. Well, that was the focus. And I have a teenager who's a close family friend, and they read it, and that's what they wanted to talk about. And I'm like, okay, that's good. That's what I want you to want to talk about, is the relationship between Sydney and Paris, and really, the thought that we're all insecure. Even the people that look like they've got it all together. Like you think, well, these guys, they're spies. They do all this stuff, and they still are racked with worry and doubt, and that's not a bad thing. But it's a thing you wrestle with, and hopefully what they come to is realization of the way to figure that stuff out is not to keep it in, but to share it, whether it's with your parent or with your sibling or your friend or whatever. And so there was a lot of that in this with Sydney and Paris that really, I think, only kind of works 5 or 6 books in, because we've been through so much with them now. It doesn't feel like it feels more organic because we've seen them over years, why she would feel the way she feels.
Well, I thought you handled that really well. And there was still so much humor with it. The adventure is, of course, breathtaking in places. And it's just one of those fast reads that screams to be read aloud. And
Well, I'm
that
not a
was,
very good reader aloud, but I read aloud when I write it because I think of it as being read aloud. I want to hear it.
well, and that's something I was thinking a lot about in terms of, there are certain books that really do say, read me out loud. And often by the time kids get to middle grade, we stop doing that, whether it's curriculum pressure or, at home they're too cool for that or whatever.
Right.
And I feel like a book like this is a great way to engage your entire class in reading aloud. You were just saying when you write it, hearing it in your head. Do you write
Right.
with sort of an intent for people to read it out loud?
No, I think because my background originally was in script writing, so there's a lot of dialogue. So I always read that out loud because I wanted to make sure the dialogue sounded true. On the page, you could say stuff that, there's this famous line from behind the scenes at Star Wars where Harrison Ford turned to George Lucas and said, "You can write this stuff, but you can't say this stuff." But it's true because some stuff you can get away with writing, and then it's like, oh no. And so I've always done that, and there's a lot of dialogue in my books, and so I want to hear it. So I know some people read it aloud, but for me, it's just like I read it aloud. Like I'm now writing book 8, and so the chapter that I'm writing right now, I have read aloud the first 3 pages of that chapter in the last 2 days, probably 30 times. Because what I find is if after I read it first for content and for hearing, but then I read it 1.5 speed, like so faster than normal. And if I can read it that way and I don't get tripped up, then I think the words are right. But if I read it fast and then I stumble, okay, that means that something about those sounds there, something there is sticking out. So polish that. And that doesn't mean make it simple or anything, but it's like it should flow. Everything should flow. And, you know, as it happens, Dr. knows a friend of mine from high school. a lot of my friends from high school and from growing up, if they read the books just because they're curious, because it's me, or they're with their kids or nieces or nephews, whatever, almost invariably what they'll tell me is, when I read this book, I know your voice so well, it just sounds like you're sitting next to me telling me a story, and that is the absolute goal.
I love that. And what a compliment, too.
I hope so. I
No,
hope.
absolutely. You know what? I was thinking, I've been fortunate enough to hear you with kids a few times over the last couple of years too at various book launches. And one of the things that strikes me when I'm sitting there is how passionately these middle graders and middle schoolers feel about these books. You know, they dress up when they come to see you. They've got very detailed questions for you. What is it like to write for that audience?
It is the absolute best. People will ask all the time, "Do you wanna write adult books?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." And I don't know that I have it in me. I think I could write a good, solid adult mystery because I read them a lot. I know them well. I have no interest because I love writing for this. I like to say that adults read books and kids live in them. They inhabit them. They reread them and reread them, and they ask questions that I would never even think of. And I'm a pretty question oriented guy. I had this girl down the street who's also one of my beta readers that she sees stuff sometimes beforehand, and I adore her. She's like family. And she called me up once. I think it was when she read Sherlock Society, yeah. So she read Sherlock Society, and she's like, sh her mom said, "Leah wants to call you now. Is it too late?" I'm like, "No, of course." And she goes, "I just have a question I need to know the answer to." And I go, "Sure, Leah." She goes, "In in in the scene," and she's, like, stuttering because she's trying to get it all out. She goes, "I you mentioned a police officer named Martinez. Now, in the second framed book, there was an FBI agent named Martinez, and I'm wondering, is this the same?" And I'm like, "That was 5 books and 2 series ago."
Wow.
But to her, these all exist in this world, and she thought, "Have I figured out some am I supposed to
Right. Did I
be
find
figuring
an
out
Easter
something?
egg?
Or is it, do I need to know this for the plot?" And I'm like, "No, actually the cop who helped me out is named Martinez, and I didn't realize I had done it 4 books ago or 5 books ago." And it's like, "Okay, that's interesting." And I'll go on tours, or when I travel, I usually will stop in local bookstores and do a talk. And like some kids will wanna like be near tears, and it's not about me, and it's an important thing to realize. It's not about me. It's about the fact that I'm the embodiment of books to that kid at this moment, because they love books, and someone who makes those or writes those is here with me, representing, almost like an ambassador representing their country of kid lit. And, I was just like, "Hey, it's okay. So it's fine. What do you wanna talk about?" And I love that passion. I did a thing recently where I thought I wanted a different way to introduce the books to someone. So I just sent a letter to some parents who I knew had kids who were into it because they'd written to me over the years. I put a post up on Facebook. I said, "I'm looking for like 15 to 20 kids that can be recorded talking about this book." And I said to the parents, I go, "Ask them these 3 questions." And it's like, say the sentence, "City Spies is," and then finish it. And then I just edited it into a version where you hear all 20 kids describing the series. So I really enjoyed doing it. I liked how it turned out. But what was great for me is I got to listen to all 20 just talk. And I just used little like 3-second, 4-second snippets. But they were into, and they, and this one girl out of Washington, D.C., she's like, you know, I just said City Spies it is. That's the only prompt. And she goes, City Spies is all about family and what it means to be a family. And there's so many different variations of it. And it's like, it is actually what I believe, but I never say, or I wouldn't think a kid would get that.
Right.
And she broke it down as well as I could. I'm like, okay, and then all of them, they did it in their rooms and on the shelf, like you've done. They had all my books back there, but they're just like, this one kid had all okay, so it's 15 books now, so it'll be all 14 books, and all of them in paperback and hardcover, so 28
Wow.
copies and it's just because, she's had to have them all the variations. And so it's amazing, and I take it as, again, it's not about me. I mean, I've been lucky the books are doing well, but it's really about I'm an entree into kids' books for them. And my friends who are also authors, most of my friends are in the kid lit area. We all feel that. It's like we're representing that, and we need to encourage that, in the world where everything's so topsy turvy. It's like the one good thing we can do is we can give kids a safe space, and we can encourage them to be critical thinkers, empathetic, and uh, curious, right? And so
Absolutely.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Imagine a space where curiosity drives innovation, where empathy fuels collaboration, and where learning feels less like a task and more like an adventure. My message isn't about adding more to your plate, it's about changing how you see the plate entirely. I'm Dr. Diane Jackson Schnorr, and through the power of purposeful play, I equip leaders, educators, and organizations with the tools you need to unlock creative problem solving, deepen human connection, and build resistant ecosystems of empathy and innovation. Attendees will walk away not just inspired, but empowered, with immediately usable strategies to spark curiosity in teams, to lead with empathy, and to infuse learning into their everyday cultures. You'll learn how play isn't child's work, it's the secret weapon of the world's most effective leaders and change makers. This is not a feel-good talk that fades by Monday morning, it's a movement. A shift in how we engage people, solve problems, and lead meaningful change. My talks and workshops are shaped by decades of experience in education and a transformative message that connects across sectors. Whether your audience is corporate, educational, or nonprofit, they'll leave ready to rethink what's possible, both personally and professionally. Because when we learn and lead through play, we don't just change organizations, we change the world. Check it out at drdianeadventures.com. And I've been talking a lot on the podcast lately with educators about it's not enough to teach kids how to read. You have to make them want to read. And that comes from doing exactly what you're talking about. It's meeting them where they are with real stories that allow them to develop empathy and critical thinking.
Well, it's also of the pet peeves. I have a lot of pet peeves in life, like most of us do. One of my biggest is when I get the sense that someone is slumming in kidlit. Some celebrity's going to write a picture book because they want to be able to say the New York Times bestseller, and because they're a celebrity, they could get on that.
Right.
Doesn't mean the book's any good, right? Or someone who's, an adult writer. Now, Carl Hyacint's the exception. Carl Hyacint's books are amazing for adults. They're amazing for kids. But some people aren't so great when they make that jump back and forth. And so, it's a mixed bag. But typically what they'll do that drives me kind of is they just talk down to the kids. They think, okay, well, I'll take what I normally do and I'll just make it dumber. And it's like, that's the exact opposite. It's like, I read a lot of mystery fiction. I watch a ton of it. I see people do things that adults will say, yeah, okay, I get it. We have to suspend disbelief. That I could never in a million years get away with kids. It's like, no, 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 no. That's too coincidental. And they will call me on it. And they, like, at events, there's this, I was at a bookstore in, I think it was Milwaukee. So I'm in Milwaukee, it's Milwaukee or St. Paul. And it was like 5 minutes before the event. But, there's already like 100 people there, and I'm up front. It just feels silly to act like I'm not there. And it's not like a TV show where I come on. So I said, okay, you guys are going to forget that I was here. We had this conversation, but we're just going to talk for 5 or 10 minutes till everyone gets here, and then we'll officially start. And I said, so ask your questions now that you worry we won't get time to get to. And this girl instantly puts her hand up. So like, great. She's a reader. She knows it. I'm going to call her. And she looks at me and she says, what happened with Robert's vision and his asthma? And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I said, is this really how this event is going to go? And like the adults had no idea, but the kids were like, what? And I go, okay, why don't you explain it to him? And she goes, well, in book 1 of City Spies, you talk about one of the ways that Mother is trying to track and find Robert is because of his glass, because he's looking for his glasses, like optic stuff, and because he has asthma and needs medication. And so that's how he looks for him. But now that we've seen him, there's a picture in the back of the book, and he's not wearing glasses in the picture, and you've never once mentioned his asthma during the book. And I said, "You wanna know the real answer?" And she goes, "Yeah." I go, "He got LASIK surgery, and his time in Egypt cleared out his lungs." And she gave me a look. She goes, "Or I forgot because that was 5 years ago, and we didn't think about the fact that he would eventually come in the thing, but you remembered."
Wow.
And she loved that it was wrong. It wasn't like, "Oh, it's like, I found the mistake." The girl Leah down the street, oh my goodness. So Le Fantôme is the evil guy who we read about in that, but we only found out his actual name at the end of the last book. We didn't even know if he was a man or a woman.
Right.
And as I was writing this book, I thought, "Oh, wait, is it La Fantôme or Le Fantôme? Because it's not a giveaway." And so I called Leah because I got Leah will know. And I go, "Leah, is it Le Fantôme or La Fantôme?" And Leah, of course, is a sixth grader who speaks French as well. And she goes, "Well, it depends on which book." And I'm like, "Oh, no, what are you talking about?" She goes, "In books 1, 2, and 5, it's Le Fantôme. In books 3 and 4, it's La Fantôme." And I'm like, "You didn't tell me?" She goes, "I don't wanna hurt your feelings."
You can just tell the kids you were trying to keep it mysterious.
Yeah, there you go.
Or you didn't know your French
Yeah,
pronouns.
so kids are great with that. Grown-ups will let that stuff slide, kids will but what's also great is they're so empathetic and caring and sweet. They don't hold it against you. You know, the books are still clever enough and thought out enough, and they know I research. So if I make a couple mistakes, then they're not gonna but I can't make a mistake of, "Oh, then they happen to of all the people in the building, turn to the one person who could help them." Like, no, I can't get away with
No.
that.
No, that makes sense. Yeah,
You
you
know,
can't do sort of those convenient coincidences,
I
the
I
big
I I
ones.
l I love procedural shows. So the Blue Bloods, the show Blue Bloods that ran
Yeah.
forever and ever. And it's great. In Blue Bloods, they constantly refer to the fact that New York City has 35,000 cops. It's like, you hear the number so much, it's like, okay, that must be the actual number. And I always tell my wife, they got 35,000 cops, but only 3 of them have ever solved a crime on this show. So what another 34,997 do? And I understand that, oh, look, 'cause, you can only have so many cast members, you can only have whatever. But it's like, I can't get away with that. I marvel and I'm jealous when I see the shortcuts that adults can take that just don't exist in the kid world.
No, I get it. I love Only Murders in the Building. Like, I
Yeah,
find it's really fun, but I know the formula so well. On the first episode, I can tell you who the guilty
yeah,
person is going to be now
yeah,
because there is a certain formula. And so we take bets in our family, and I won this last season because I was like, oh no, that character didn't show up again. They're absolutely the guilty person.
yeah, absolutely. The other favorite one is if you watch reruns of Law& and Order, you can always tell who's gonna be guilty because it's the part-time actor who went on to become a much bigger actor.
Yep.
So many people got their start there, and it's like, okay, so Scarlett Johansson, here she's only in for 3 scenes, but she's too big to just be like a witness, so she's gonna be the one, or something like that, yeah.
That's pretty funny. So you've started when you're out and doing your book tours, you've been bringing other authors with you, and you
Oh,
sort of
love
started
that,
this
yeah.
very cool conversation with other folks. Are you going to continue that with this?
Yeah, so this tour I love. I'm with such a great group. I'm always very lucky in that. So what ends up happening is we pick the tours based on bookstores. Okay, these are the bookstores we want to visit, and then geography. It's like, I have Tuesday night in Richmond, but I'm due to school Monday morning in Wednesday morning in Washington, so I could do that drive. I can't jump to St. Louis and make
Right.
it back, right? So geography and that, and then it becomes my publicist who plans the tours. He goes, "All right, you tell me who you want," and it's like almost every town has writers who live there. And so I go, "Oh, that's great, that's great." So, like, this time in Richmond, I'm gonna be with Meg Medina. She's the past, you know, national ambassador for young people's literature or whatever the full title of that is. She's amazing.
Yes.
So and then I'm gonna be with Tracy Wolff in Washington, DC, and
Very
that's
cool.
exciting because Tracy's got a huge career in young adult, but this is her first middle grade book.
I
And
just
so
read The Aftermath and just
yeah.
had Tracy on the show
Oh, that's
this
great,
past
yeah.
week.
So I'll be with her there. Then I'm going up outside of Philadelphia in Haverford, Pennsylvania, and I'll be at with Anna Kelly, who's
Nice.
amazing.
Amazing.
Allison Gerber is going to be with me in Connecticut, and then I end up in Boston with Raul III.
Wow.
And Raul is hilarious and ridiculously talented illustrator and writer. And, and it's funny because none of those necessarily scream out, Allison writes mysteries, so that fits. But what's great in our community is it's not like, well, those aren't your type of writers. Those aren't right. Meg Medina writes Graciela and the Abyss is very different than and she's calling me saying, "Oh my goodness, I love this series so much. I'm so glad we're doing this." I'm like, "Wait, you've read City Spies?" It just doesn't seem possible to me, And another one she's not, but when I get close, I'll do it. Linda Sue Park is obsessed with
Yes.
City Spies, and it's and it's just so nice the way we can get together. And what I like about that is Meg Medina and I having a conversation at BBGB bookstore in Richmond will be a one of a kind conversation. I won't have that again. It's, and so that's fun for people to come listen to, I hope, but it's fun for me. And it's a neat thing. And I've gone on now at these tours, all of a sudden you look at the list of the people who I've gotten to be in conversation with, and it's just like, wow, it's an impressive group of which, I'm I'm honored that they're willing to do it,
Have you
you know?
thought about recording these conversations for a podcast?
Well, you already have the podcast world down. I thought about I did a little mini fun podcast last summer, and that was a great group. That was Pam Munoz Ryan, Jasmine Warga, Alan Gratz, Stu Gibbs, Karina Glazer, just won a Newbery last week. You know, I I haven't, but I have thought we've got to do more. We've got to record some things that we can have fun with. So maybe short little 2-minute bits on this tour. At least the plan is at every stop, the in conversation partner and I are going to dance to Mambo Italiano, and I'm
I
going to make a
love it.
video of it because it's got Italy on the cover. So I thought, you know, so yeah, you just never know. And then what I like about doing it that way too is I visit schools during the day, but if a kid wants to come see me again with their parents, they're not gonna hear "Oh, that's the same talk again." It's gonna be completely one of a kind conversation.
That's amazing. And what a gift to the kids, too, because you're exposing them to an author who might write in a different vein as well. And so
Well,
they
that's
come for
always the
you,
hope
but they may
that
walk away with a love
we
for
cross
somebody
over.
else.
Yeah. And, because what we really want is you really want them to have a a wide breadth of books that they read, of genres, you know, Meg and Aaron and Raul and I, all really different in a lot of ways, but all really similar in a lot of ways, and I think that's a great thing for them to see. You know, it's
Yeah.
like he's an illustrator. She writes really kind of some heavy books and some light book. Meg goes all around. She's capable of doing everything. You know, Erin writes fun stuff. She writes deep stuff. She writes it, but it's like exposure to that is so key because I think for your reading life, you don't want your reading life to be limited to a narrow stream.
Exactly. The broader you read, the better off you are, I think.
And the more you'll find out, oh, wait, these books aren't so different. There's a fun thing. So Karina Glazer wrote the Vanderbeekers of 141st Street. And we did a school visit together last year. And I came up with this idea in the hotel the night before, and I didn't tell her about it. And we talked about the books. City Spies, very different than Vanderbeekers. And I said, now I want to tell everyone how similar these books are. And I went down off of 15 similarities between the books and the structure and the characters and this and the that. And it's so just because a book has a different icing on the cake doesn't mean the cake's not similar. And so you might like that cake and you might want to try that icing. And it's not so far apart that it's not it still has base and stuff you read. So I'm really a big fan of encouraging people who read my books to read other people's books that I can recommend, and they're great about doing that for me, that Meg is willing to take it. Well, I'm out here because 'cause I'm promoting my book. That's part of the job.
Sure.
these 5 people, they're out because they're just nice, good people. You know, Erin doesn't live, she lives in Delaware. She's driving from Delaware to Haverford, and we've never even met. We just know each other through friends and through, electronically. And she didn't hesitate to say, "Oh, yeah, I love that. That sounds great."
I
And
love
that's really
that.
I love that so much.
And that's magical, and that's one of the reasons I love the kidlit world so much
Yeah,
is I think that, as you said, the people who write for children, whether you're writing for early childhood, elementary, or middle grade, there's a heart there, and it's a respect, and there's that whole empathy connection, and
yeah.
you're just nice people.
Well, and what's funny, and I worked in kids TV. So kids TV in the TV world is as nice and supportive as you're gonna find. But even still, it was inherently competitive. This show has its budgets, and this show has this kind of money, and there's only 13 episodes. That means there's only 13 writers that are gonna get a pop at it, all like this. And so you couldn't help but feel competition, even with these people who are your friends that you want. I think in the same way that actors are supportive of each other, but they're competing against each other.
Right.
And I just have never felt competition among the writers in middle grade. Across the board, they will say, "Hey, if they read your book, that makes it more likely they're going to read mine."
Exactly.
Right? You know, we all lift each other. And what we want is we want readers because none of us can write enough to satisfy readers. Only all of us can.
I love
And
that.
that vibe is just really nice.
So I have one final question for today. You've heard this question before, but
Uh-oh.
it
I
still
should've
feels like it's an important one to keep asking,
Sure.
especially given how topsy-turvy the world is. What's bringing you hope?
So many things. W But one of them, is the readership that we have. "Oh, kids aren't reading anymore. Oh, all they want is screens. Oh, blah, middle grade is dead." All these things, and those aren't inherently untrue, right? People give you numbers about reading is down. You know, the really harsh numbers that get me are kids now are reading snippets, not whole books, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But boy, do I meet a lot of kids who read a lot and who love it and who embody it and who talk about the world of books and the world of the characters that they love in a positive way. You know, one of the reasons I like to write the books that I write is, I think there's an interesting correlation between popular culture, art, and history. And you look through Cold War, and there were certain types of movie. After Watergate, there's paranoia. There's a direct connection to what we consume as entertainment to what's going on in the world. And we've had this run of superhero for a while. And I think that's not coincidental. I think a lot of that has to do with I think there's a lot that goes into it from, spurts of energy and color and brightness and all these kind of things that change us man. But I think we feel like the world is at a place where you gotta be a superhero to solve problems, right? That these problems are too big for mortals. And I don't believe that. And so I like to write stories about, no, the way that problems have historically always been solved is by people who care working together and helping each other. And that's what I want to write about. And I'm going to write about that not in a serious, heavy way. I'm going to write about that, which is not to say there aren't serious moments in my books and emotional moments in my books, but I want to write about it in a way that you're so busy having fun on the adventure, trying to solve the puzzle and figure out this, that you didn't even realize, oh, wait, we've really modeled the right behavior here. And that this, if in their way, the characters, whether it's the Sherlock Society or the City Spies or the kids in Framed, they solved a part of the problems of the world, then that makes you, the reader, feel like maybe I and with my friends can solve a part of the problem too.
Oh, I
And that gives
love
me hope.
that. That
Yeah.
may be my favorite answer you've given to that question.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I don't remember, so that's good. But no, but I really appreciate you. And again, you're part of the same community. I really appreciate you spreading this love. It's a lot of labor intensive work goes into this for you. But, it, you look back, there's certain things that are universally true. In retrospect, never, ever, ever have we looked back at the people who were trying to restrict books and seeing them as the heroes.
Exactly.
And never, ever, ever will we look back at the people who encouraged reading and who encouraged a love of literature and not think, oh, wait, they're on the right side. And you're part of that. And I appreciate you bringing me on your show to talk about it.
Well, I appreciate it, and I look forward to having you back. I can't wait for the next Sherlock and the next City Spies.
Art Attack is a lot of fun. That's the next Sherlock. It's about graffiti art in Miami, which is a huge subculture of Miami. I even took graffiti lessons.
Way cool. All right. You're coming back to talk about that one. That sounds amazing. All right. Well, thank you, James, and good luck on your tour.
Thanks so much.
You've been listening to the Adventures in Learning podcast with your host, Dr. Diane. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, download, and let us know what you think, and please tell a friend. If you want the full show notes and the pictures, please go to drdianeadventures.com. We look forward to you joining us on our next adventure.